There is a peculiar pain that comes not from strangers, but from those whose blood runs nearest to our own. The wound inflicted by an enemy is expected. The wound inflicted by family arrives as a surprise and therefore cuts twice as deep. Many people spend years asking a question that haunts their quiet moments. Why does my own family reject me? At first, we assume there must be something wrong with us. We search our faults. We replay old conversations. We examine every decision, every word, every mistake. Surely, we think if those closest to us cannot accept us, then we must be unworthy of acceptance. But this conclusion is often false. The truth is that rejection is not always a verdict upon your worth. More often, it is a revelation of another person's fears. Human beings are strange creatures. We claim to love truth, yet we frequently prefer comfort. We say we desire growth, yet we often resent those who grow beyond the boundaries we have assigned to them. When a person begins to change, those around them are forced to confront a difficult reality. They may need to change as well, and many would rather reject the messenger than face the message. Consider what happens when someone decides to live differently. Perhaps they abandon destructive habits. Perhaps they begin pursuing a higher purpose. Perhaps they refuse to participate in old patterns of bitterness, manipulation, or resentment. One might imagine such changes would be celebrated. Yet often, they are resisted. Why? Because your transformation becomes a mirror, and mirrors are uncomfortable things. A mirror does not accuse. It merely reveals. The moment one person chooses a better path, others are reminded of paths they themselves have refused to walk. This is why rejection frequently intensifies when you begin doing what is right. Not because goodness creates enemies, but because goodness exposes darkness. There is another truth that must be understood. Many people confuse familiarity with love. They are not the same thing. A family may know your history without understanding your heart. They may know your weaknesses without recognizing your strengths. They may remember who you were, while refusing to acknowledge who you have become. The tragedy is that some people become prisoners of outdated versions of themselves, because those around them insist on keeping them there. Every time they attempt to grow, someone says, "That's not who you are." But growth has always required leaving behind who you were. A seed cannot become a tree without ceasing to be a seed. A child cannot become an adult without leaving childhood behind, and a soul cannot mature without shedding old identity. Perhaps the greatest mistake we make is believing that acceptance from others is the source of our value. It is not. Your value existed before anyone approved of you. It existed before anyone praised you. It existed before anyone rejected you. The opinions of others may influence your emotions, but they do not determine your worth. This is a difficult lesson because we naturally long for belonging. We wish to be understood. We wish to be welcomed. We wish to hear those closest to us say, "I see who you are, and I am glad you are here." When those words never come, the heart aches. Yet there is freedom hidden within that disappointment. For once, you stop demanding validation from people unable to give it. You become free to seek truth instead of approval, and truth is infinitely more valuable. The CMIC. Shocking truth is not that some families reject those they should love. The shocking truth is that rejection often becomes the very instrument through which character is formed. The loneliness teaches courage. The misunderstanding teaches patience. The betrayal teaches wisdom. The hardship teaches endurance. What was intended to break, you can become the force that strengthens you. This does not mean the pain is good. Pain is painful because it is real. But suffering can become meaningful when it drives us toward deeper truths. History is filled with people who were misunderstood by those closest to them. They were mocked before they were respected, rejected before they were appreciated, ignored before they were remembered. Had they surrendered to the judgment of others, their purpose would have died before it was born. Therefore, if you find yourself rejected, do not immediately conclude that you are failing. Ask instead whether you are growing. Ask whether you are becoming more honest, more courageous, more faithful, more compassionate. If so, continue. For not every closed door is a sign to turn back. Sometimes it is simply evidence that your journey leads somewhere others are unwilling to go. The day may come when those who rejected you finally understand, and the day may never come. Either way, your responsibility remains the same. Do not become bitter. Do not become cruel. Do not allow rejection to transform you into the very thing that wounded you. Choose integrity. Choose truth. Choose love. And walk forward without fear. For the measure of a life is not found in how many people approve of it, but in whether it was lived faithfully, courageously, and well. And that is a truth no rejection can ever take away. One of the deepest wounds a person can experience is the feeling of being rejected by those they expected would always stand beside them. When rejection comes from family, it carries a unique kind of pain. The people who watched you grow, who shared your home, your memories, and your struggles, are often the very people whose approval you value most. When that approval is withheld, it can leave you questioning everything about yourself. Many people spend years wondering whether they are somehow defective, unworthy, or incapable of being loved. They begin to believe that if their own family cannot accept them, then perhaps no one truly can. Yet this conclusion is one of the greatest misunderstandings a person can embrace. The rejection of others does not determine your value. It never has, and it never will. Human worth is not something that can be increased by praise or diminished by criticism. It exists independently of the opinions of those around us. Unfortunately, many people spend their lives allowing the judgments of others to become the measure of their identity. They allow another person's disappointment, anger, or misunderstanding to define who they believe themselves to be. The truth is that family rejection often says more about the struggles, fears, expectations, and limitations of the family than it does about the individual being rejected. Sometimes people reject what they do not understand. Sometimes they reject what challenges them. Sometimes they reject someone who refuses to remain confined within the role they have assigned to them. A person may grow, mature, and change, while those around them continue to see only the version they have become comfortable with. When this happens, tension is almost inevitable. It is important to understand that acceptance and worth are not the same thing. Acceptance is something given by others. Worth is something you already possess. Acceptance can be withdrawn. Worth cannot. Acceptance depends on changing emotions, personal opinions, and circumstances. Worth remains constant, regardless of what anyone thinks or says. This distinction is crucial because many people spend their lives chasing acceptance when they should be learning to recognize their own value. Consider how often history has celebrated individuals who were misunderstood by those closest to them. Many of the world's greatest thinkers, leaders, and visionaries faced criticism from their families, friends, and communities before their contributions were recognized. If they had accepted rejection as evidence of their worthlessness, they would never have fulfilled their purpose. Their value existed long before anyone acknowledged it. When family rejection occurs, there is a temptation to become bitter. There is a temptation to allow resentment to take root in the heart. Yet bitterness only deepens the wound. It gives those who hurt you continued power over your life. A wiser path is to recognize the pain without allowing it to define you. You can acknowledge the hurt while refusing to surrender your identity to it. The opinions of others may affect your emotions, but they do not determine your value. Your worth does not rise when people applaud you, nor does it fall when they reject you. It remains unchanged. Understanding this truth brings freedom. It allows you to move forward with confidence, even when approval is absent. It allows you to live according to truth rather than fear. And it reminds you that no rejection, no matter how painful, has the power to diminish the value that has always been yours. One of the most surprising realities of life is that personal growth does not always receive the celebration we expect. We often imagine that when we become wiser, stronger, more disciplined, or more purposeful, the people around us will applaud our progress. We assume that positive change naturally inspires support and encouragement. Yet experience frequently teaches a different lesson. Growth often creates resistance, especially from those who have become comfortable with who we used to be. Human beings are creatures of habit. We find security in what is familiar. The roles people play within families, friendships, and communities often become deeply established over many years. Whether those roles are healthy or unhealthy, they create a sense of predictability. When one person begins to change, the entire balance of those relationships can be disturbed. What once felt comfortable suddenly feels uncertain. The person who always remained silent begins speaking with confidence. The one who tolerated mistreatment begins establishing boundaries. The individual who once followed the crowd begins choosing a different path. Such changes may be beneficial, but they can also make others uncomfortable. This discomfort often has little to do with the person who is growing. Instead, it arises from what that growth represents. When someone improves their life, it becomes a reminder that change is possible. For those who have avoided difficult decisions or resisted personal responsibility, this reminder can feel threatening. It quietly asks questions they may not want to answer. Why have they remained where they are? Why have they not pursued their own growth? Why have they accepted limitations that no longer need to exist? Rather than facing these uncomfortable reflections, some people respond by criticizing or rejecting the person who is changing. Growth also challenges expectations. Many people become attached to a particular image of who someone is supposed to be. They may expect you to think a certain way, behave a certain way, or remain within the boundaries they have defined. When you begin to grow beyond those expectations, they may interpret your transformation as a form of rebellion or rejection. In reality, you are not rejecting them. You are simply becoming the person you were meant to become. Yet not everyone will understand that distinction. There is a natural temptation during these moments to abandon growth in order to preserve acceptance. Many people shrink themselves to make others comfortable. They silence their ambitions, suppress their convictions, and ignore opportunities for development because they fear criticism or conflict. While this may provide temporary peace, it comes at a tremendous cost. A person who sacrifices growth for approval eventually loses both. They fail to reach their potential while still discovering that approval remains uncertain. True growth requires courage. It requires the willingness to continue moving forward, even when others misunderstand your intentions. It means accepting that not everyone will celebrate your progress. Some may question your decisions. Some may mock your efforts. Some may attempt to pull you back toward the person you once were. Yet, none of these reactions should determine your course. Every meaningful transformation involves leaving something behind. A student leaves ignorance for knowledge. An athlete leaves weakness for strength. A mature person leaves childish thinking for greater wisdom. Growth has always required change, and change has always created resistance. This does not mean you are on the wrong path. Often, resistance is simply evidence that genuine transformation is taking place. The important thing is to remain humble, patient, and committed to what is right. Continue growing even when it is difficult. Continue learning even when others doubt you. Continue becoming the person you are called to be. Those who truly care for your well-being will eventually recognize the value of your growth. And even if some never do, the rewards of becoming your best self will always be greater than the comfort of remaining unchanged. Many people assume that because someone has known them for a long time, that person truly understands them. It is a comforting belief, especially when it comes to family and close relationships. We naturally expect that those who have shared our lives, witnessed our struggles, and observed our journey from the beginning possess a deep understanding of who we are. Yet, familiarity and understanding are not the same thing. A person may know countless details about your life and still fail to recognize the deepest truths about your heart. Familiarity is often based on observation. It comes from seeing someone repeatedly over time. Family members know your childhood stories, your mistakes, your habits, and your history. They remember the decisions you made years ago and the person you once were. Because of this shared history, they may believe they have a complete picture of your identity. However, understanding requires something more. Requires listening, empathy, curiosity, and a willingness to see beyond old assumptions. One of the challenges of long-term relationships is that people often become trapped inside the expectations of others. Family members sometimes create fixed ideas about who a person is and who they should remain. Once these expectations are established, any change can be difficult for them to accept. They may continue relating to you as though you are the same person you were years ago, even after you have grown, matured, and developed in significant ways. This can be deeply frustrating. You may work hard to improve yourself, gain wisdom through experience, and develop new perspectives, only to discover that some people still see you through the lens of your past. They remember your failures but overlook your progress. They focus on old mistakes while ignoring present achievements. In their minds, the image of who you once were becomes stronger than the reality of who you are today. Such situations often create feelings of loneliness and disappointment. It is painful to realize that the people closest to you do not fully understand your thoughts, motivations, or aspirations. You may find yourself repeatedly explaining your choices, defending your growth, or trying to prove that you have changed. Yet despite your efforts, some people remain attached to an outdated version of you. The reason this happens is not always malicious. Human beings naturally simplify the world around them. Once they form an opinion about someone, they often stop paying close attention. Instead of continually learning about the person, they rely on memories and assumptions. They confuse what they once knew with what is true today. As a result, they become familiar with your story while losing sight of your ongoing growth. True understanding requires humility. It requires recognizing that people are constantly changing. No one remains exactly the same throughout life. Experiences shape us, challenges refine us, and lessons transform us. A person who genuinely understands another remains open to discovering who that person is becoming, rather than clinging to who they used to be. There is an important lesson in this reality. Not everyone will fully understand you, and that is not necessarily a reflection of your value. You cannot force others to see what they are unwilling to see. You cannot make someone understand your heart if they are determined to rely on old assumptions. What you can do is continue living authentically and honestly, allowing your actions to reflect your character. When you stop seeking constant validation from those who misunderstand you, you gain a sense of freedom. You no longer feel compelled to prove yourself at every turn. Instead, you focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Over time, some people may come to recognize your growth, others may never do so. But your purpose is not to spend your life convincing others of who you are. Your purpose is to continue growing into the person you were meant to become, regardless of whether everyone understands the journey. One of the greatest struggles a person faces is the desire to be approved by others. From childhood, we learn to seek acceptance. We feel encouraged when we receive praise and discouraged when we face criticism. There is nothing unusual about wanting to be accepted. It is part of human nature. We were created for relationships, and naturally we want those around us to appreciate, understand, and value us. However, problems arise when approval becomes more important than truth. The moment we begin shaping our lives around the opinions of others, we surrender a part of our freedom. Many people spend years chasing approval without realizing the cost. They carefully adjust their words to avoid criticism. They hide their true beliefs to prevent disagreement. They suppress their dreams because someone might disapprove. They make decisions based not on what is right, but on what is popular. At first, this may seem like a path toward peace and acceptance, yet it often produces the opposite result. The more a person depends upon approval, the more anxious and insecure they become. The reason is simple. Human approval is unstable. People change their opinions frequently. Someone who praises you today may criticize you tomorrow. One group may celebrate your choices while another condemns them. If your sense of worth depends on public opinion, your confidence will rise and fall with every compliment and every criticism. You become like a ship tossed about by every changing wind, never finding a stable course. Truth, however, is different. Truth remains steady regardless of how people feel about it. It does not become false because it is unpopular, nor does it become true because it is widely accepted. Throughout history, many important truths were resisted before they were embraced. People who stood for what was right often faced misunderstanding, rejection, and opposition. Yet they continued because they valued truth more than approval. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must choose between pleasing people and living honestly. This choice is rarely comfortable. Speaking the truth may create tension. Following your convictions may disappoint others. Pursuing your purpose may lead some people to question your decisions. Yet, a life built upon approval is ultimately unsatisfying because it is not truly your own. It belongs to whoever happens to be influencing you at the moment. Seeking truth requires courage. It means being willing to stand alone when necessary. It means accepting that not everyone will agree with your choices. It means recognizing that some relationships may change when you refuse to compromise your principles. This can be painful, especially when the people who disapprove are those closest to you. Yet there is a deep peace that comes from knowing you are living according to what you genuinely believe is right. When a person is guided by truth rather than approval, they experience a new kind of freedom. They no longer feel compelled to win every argument or gain everyone's acceptance. They become less concerned with appearances and more concerned with integrity. Their decisions are based on conviction rather than fear. They are able to remain steady in both praise and criticism because their foundation is not built upon the opinions of others. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing wise counsel. Truth and humility belong together. A wise person remains willing to learn, to listen, and to admit mistakes, but they do not abandon their convictions simply to gain approval. They understand that popularity and righteousness are not always the same thing. In the end, approval is temporary, but truth endures. The applause of people may fade, and public opinion may shift, but a life built upon truth remains strong. When you stop measuring your worth by the acceptance of others and begin measuring your life by faithfulness to what is right, you discover a freedom that no rejection can take away. It is the freedom to live honestly, courageously, and with purpose, regardless of who approves or disapproves along the way. Life has a way of teaching its deepest lessons through its most painful experiences. Among those experiences, betrayal is often one of the hardest to endure. When trust is broken by people we care about, the wound reaches far beyond the moment itself. It affects our confidence, our sense of security, and sometimes even our understanding of ourselves. The pain becomes even greater when the betrayal comes from those we expected to support us. It can leave us feeling abandoned, confused, and deeply disappointed. Yet despite its power to hurt, betrayal does not have to define the rest of your life. It can become a source of strength if you choose to respond to it wisely. The natural reaction to betrayal is often anger. We replay the events in our minds, wondering how things could have been different. We imagine conversations we wish we had, and we dwell on the unfairness of what happened. While these emotions are understandable, remaining trapped in them can prevent healing. The longer we hold onto bitterness, the more control the betrayal continues to have over us. In a strange way, the person who hurt us keeps occupying space in our thoughts and emotions long after the event has passed. Strength begins when we refuse to allow betrayal to determine our future. This does not mean pretending the pain never existed. It does not mean denying the hurt or excusing harmful behavior. Rather, it means acknowledging the wound while choosing not to build our identity around it. We recognize what happened, learn from it, and continue moving forward. One of the unexpected gifts hidden within betrayal is wisdom. Before experiencing betrayal, many people move through life with unrealistic expectations about others. They assume everyone will be loyal, honest, and trustworthy. While optimism is valuable, experience teaches us to balance trust with discernment. Betrayal often sharpens our ability to recognize character, establish healthy boundaries, and make wiser decisions in the future. The lesson may be painful, but the wisdom gained can protect us from greater harm later. Betrayal can also strengthen resilience. When everything is going well, it is easy to believe that our strength comes from favorable circumstances. Yet true strength is revealed when circumstances become difficult. The challenges we survive often show us capabilities we never knew we possessed. We discover that we can endure disappointment, recover from heartbreak, and continue pursuing our goals despite setbacks. The very experience that seemed determined to break us can become proof of our ability to persevere. Another important transformation occurs when betrayal teaches compassion. Those who have suffered deeply often become more understanding of the struggles of others. They learn to recognize hidden pain and offer encouragement where they once might have offered judgment. Their wounds create greater empathy. Instead of becoming hardened, they become more capable of extending grace and understanding. The choice before every wounded person is whether pain will make them bitter or better. Bitterness keeps the past alive and allows old injuries to control present decisions. Growth, however, transforms pain into purpose. It uses hardship as fuel for maturity, wisdom, and personal development. The betrayal remains part of the story, but it no longer controls the ending. In time, many people discover that the experience they once wished had never happened became one of the most important turning points in their lives. It forced them to grow stronger, think deeper, and become wiser. What appeared to be a devastating loss became an opportunity for transformation. The betrayal did not defeat them.